I see thousands of dollars and zero hit.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Moving Markets. Had to mute the television there to get started. That's what every time I'm looking up here to the right, I'm looking at the TV. I'm seeing where we're at with the Dow Jones, with the NASDAQ, with the S&P. Welcome to Moving Markets. Today is February. God, let me start this whole thing over. Today is May the 23rd, 2019. The U.S. stock market has been open for a little over 3 hours, and it's an ugly day today. The sell-off is pretty big. We've got the Dow Jones Industrial Average right now down about 375 points. It's been down as much as 410, 415 points. The S&P, I think that's about 1.5% sell-off. The S&P down 42, the NASDAQ down 144. What is moving this? What is causing? Oh, by the way, I've got my grunt style shirt on there. Second Amendment grunt style shirt. Love you guys at Grunt Style, by the way. When I reach like 1 billion people that follow my podcast, if you want to send me a free shirt or free sweatshirt every now and then, I'm okay with that. It's not a military specific shirt, but or a hat, but I got my U.S. flag on here. One more time, I'm going to say it every day. Shout out to the men and women that put on the uniform for this country, for the men and women in the military and the branches of the military that defend our country, and for the men and women that wear the blue uniform throughout this country in city, county, state police departments, highway patrol. Love you guys. Love what you do. Even when your politics don't agree with me, even when we have disagreements on that stuff, I love what you guys do, and I love the pretend. And can't forget the firefighters out there. Shout out to my friend Mark, who is the bravest, best firefighter in the world, and his son Chris. Who's just getting started. Anyway, the markets are moving today. It's kind of weird because they're moving almost on a lack of news today. But it's maybe because there was too much hope, too much optimism put into the possibility that the trade war, the tariffs, the dispute, the latest little spat that we're having with China, that it might come to an end, that it might, we've hit road bumps with China previously. We've had situations where since these trade negotiations began, there have been times where it's had little hiccups, it's had little bumps. But usually within a couple of days, within 2 or 3 days, you have someone from the administration, and not someone who knows someone who may possibly be close to the situation. I hate when I hear that, because when I hear about someone who's close to the administration under conditions of anonymity says, that's code word for what I'm about to tell you is BS, and I have no source to back it up. But if someone in the past, you've had someone from the administration, you've had Steve Mnuchin, who's heavily involved in these talks. You've had Lighthizer, who's heavily involved in the talks. You've had Larry Kudlow, who's maybe not as directly involved, but certainly very close to the situation. One of them has gone on TV. One of them has gone on to an interview somewhere or said something publicly about, okay, we're making progress, we're still talking, or we've worked this out, or we've worked through this. That hasn't happened this time. And there was an anticipation or an expectation. What started this whole market decline and this whole market sell-off was what went on 2 weekends ago when the president tweeted out that, hey, China's backing out of the deal. China's reneging on the deal, and it kind of sucks. And so you've got this situation now where people are expecting that quick turnaround. People are expecting someone to come along and save the day and say, oh, it's okay, we've worked this out, or we've done this, and it hasn't come. When you add to that the concern that farmers are having with the tariffs that are being placed on them, and with the nasty vitriol that is going on between the Democrat House of Representatives and the Democrats in the Senate and the President of the United States. I mean, it's gotten ugly to a level of ugly that I have never seen in my lifetime. I mean, it kills me that Nancy Pelosi yesterday basically accused the President of the United States of a cover-up but she can't tell you what he's covering up. The Mueller report is done. There's no evidence of collusion by this president. If there's no evidence of collusion, there cannot be any obstruction of justice. Get this through your head, people. You cannot obstruct an investigation into a crime that never took place. And it's just, it's asinine. It's crazy what is going on. And then Nancy Pelosi comes out and says he's involved in a cover-up. What is he covering up? What the crap is he covering up? But it's just, and then look, I don't like the way, I still don't always like the way the president says the things he does. I don't often disagree with what he's saying and the fact that he's defending himself. What troubles me is sometimes the way he says it. I mean, if there was a little more civility in the tone, if there was a little more, and look, I don't blame him for being pissed off. I really don't. The fact that he's upset makes all the sense in the world. If you were coming under the kind of attacks that he's coming under with no basis for the attacks, you'd be upset too. And don't act like you wouldn't be. And don't go into this nonsense about, well, I haven't committed a crime. Well, neither has he, you freaking morons. Anyway, that is the nastiness that exists in Washington, D.C. right now, and it's in large part what is causing stocks to sell off today. Now, if you listen to Kevin Hurley and I yesterday, Kevin was a guest of mine on the show yesterday. If you listened to us yesterday, you know that in addition to that, you've also got the situation with the upcoming holiday weekend and how that sometimes creates a sell-off, and you've got that going on as well. So it's, that's the backdrop of the sell-off today, and that's what you've got going on. And it's ugly. I mean, it's ugly in spite of the fact that most corporate earnings have come in good this past quarter, in spite of the fact that wages are increasing, in spite of the fact that we're at historic lows for unemployment. There are more jobs than there are people to fill them. That's in a sense, that is virtual zero unemployment. I know there are still people that are unemployed, but it's either because they're not qualified or they're not willing to take a job. And some of them would like to be working, and there's not a lot that they're qualified for out there. Some of them are unwilling to work, or they're unwilling to take a job that they feel is beneath them. They could go and work in a fast food place. They're simply unwilling to because they feel like that's beneath them. And in some cases, look, in some cases, there may be a spouse that's working and they don't need to run out and get a job at a McDonald's or a Burger King. They can take their time and look. I'm not picking on people that are taking their time and looking. Maybe they got laid off from a $100,000 a year job, and they're not going to go work for $15 an hour at McDonald's unless they get to the point. And I believe a lot of those people would, if they got to the point where that was their only option. But I don't blame people for staying on unemployment for a little bit longer and trying to figure out how to get back into a job that's close to where they were, that they might have been laid off or something like that. So, but you've got close to zero unemployment if you consider the number of jobs versus the number of people that are looking for jobs. There are a lot of things going on that in theory should have things moving up in the markets, but we're moving down and we're selling off because of the tariffs, because of the trade war and so forth. And I've never I've never argued with the fact that tariffs are going to hurt U.S. businesses. They are going to hurt the U.S. economy, but not nearly to the degree that people claim they're going to. I think I mentioned this briefly. I was so upset. Liz Klayman, I love you. I love your program. I think you do a fantastic job, but you did not directly challenge, and you needed to just, directly challenge this lady that you had on your program a couple of days ago that said a 25% tariff on a pair of $150 tennis shoes is going to make it $195. No, it's not. That $150 pair of tennis shoes is costing about $35 to $37 to make and to ship over here. And if you put the tariff on that entire $37.50, it only raises the cost by $10. And there's no way in the world that between the corporation and the retailer and any other middleman that's involved in that, you don't need to pass along a cost to the consumer that is 25% above the $150 retail price. But you let her get away with it, and you even nodded your head in agreement. And Liz, I love your program. I watch it almost every day. But man, punch someone, like metaphorically, not literally, But when someone says that, you got to stop them cold in their tracks and say, no, you are not being honest. You're not being accurate about what these tariffs are going to do to the American consumer. A 25% tariff to the American consumer may hit our pocketbook to the tune of about 5%. And that's if the company passes on every single solitary penny of it. Now, there are some products that are Chinese made and manufactured by a Chinese company. And if that product is coming to the United States and there's a 25% tariff, then the retailer may need to pass on the bulk of that, or at least a good portion of that. But even in that case, the retailer is not, they're getting hit with 25%, but they could pass on the exact dollar cost to us, and it may only be 12.5% or 13%. So you've got to give these numbers accurately. I'm trying to say this with tough love, Liz, because I love your program. I love your show. I think you're fantastic, and you do a lot of good. You give a lot of good information out there. But get these numbers correct. Don't let someone like that get on your program and get away with a gross exaggeration of the numbers and what tariffs are going to do. So anyway, look, they're going to hurt, and it hurts when China puts tariffs on our farmers, and we're selling billions of dollars of soybeans or millions of dollars of soybeans to China, and we're selling pork and we're selling other things, and they tack on a 25% tariff. That stings. That stings in a big way, because what is more likely going to happen is that they're going to buy less from us. It's not the U.S. producer that's going to pay that tariff. It stings because they're going to buy less as a result of those tariffs. So, look, the trade war, at least short term, it's going to impact both countries. Longer term, it will hit China in a much more difficult way than it'll hit the U.S. Okay, let's do part 4 of our 4-part. It's a 5-part series this week. So tomorrow, we're going to culminate in the big overarching lie about socialism. Today, we're going to do the 4th, slightly smaller lie about socialism. You have to be willing. You have to willfully buy into these lies. Look, the people that are peddling these lies. Let's talk for just a moment. Before I go into the 4th lie about socialism, let's talk for just a minute about the people peddling these lies. The people peddling these lies want to stay in power in the government. Bottom line, the only people that have something to gain from the peddling of these lies are dishonest politicians, and some of their cronies that may not be in political offices but are so blinded by their own politics that they'll go along with it. Don't ever forget that. But you as an individual, you as an American consumer, you as a voter, I don't care if you're Democrat, I don't care if you're independent, I don't care if you're libertarian, I don't care if you're Republican, I don't care if you're independent and you lean strong liberal, if you're independent and you lean strong conservative. I don't care. You have to, and I don't care what your age is. Let me say this. Socialism resonates more and comes across more popular with the younger generation. A recent poll that came out, I think by Gallup, and I think they may have teamed up with ABC or NBC, a recent poll that came out suggested that in the age group from 18, I think they said 18 to 38, which to me is way too broad a sampling. In fact, I think it's unfair that you lump people that are 28 to 38 in with that 18 to 28 category, because most people, by the time they're 28, they're done with college and they're working. The exceptions are people that may be getting a PhD, doctors, lawyers that are getting a Juris Doctorate degree. Some advanced engineering degrees and masters, they might still be working, but by age 28, most people are going into the workforce, or they've already been there for a while, even the ones that have a higher level of education, and they start to make a shift. I think by the time you get into your early 30s, you're probably starting to shift on your opinion of socialism, because you start to see the taxes taken out of your check. There's less of a chance that mom and dad are paying some of the bills and paying your way through college. You're starting to figure out that that $100,000 of student loans you racked up, you've got no way to pay for them with a $45,000 job, because you decided to spend $100,000 and get a worthless crap degree in liberal arts or humanitarian, humanities degree or something like that. I mean, it's go ahead and spend your $100,000 and get a job in gender studies. That's brilliant. That's the freaking most brilliant thing I've ever heard. Trust me, my tax dollars will be supporting you for the whole rest of your life because you'll never be able to pay your own way in life. Anyway, you've got to be at some point in time willing to buy into these lies. And the older you get, no matter what your core politics are, no matter if you're a registered Democrat or registered Republican, the older you get, the less willing you are to buy into the lies. People's BS meter improves with age. You've seen more, you've done more, you've experienced more, you've heard more crap, and you become better at recognizing the crap. Now, there are exceptions to this, but generally speaking, you have a better BS meter. So here's the fourth lie that you have to be willing to buy into. This fourth lie. The first lie was that socialism has ever worked anywhere. It hasn't. And if you listen to the people who say it has, you're willing to not do any research on your own, and you're willing to believe the lies. The second lie was that government can do anything at all more efficiently than the private sector can do it. You have to buy into that lie, and it's a flat out lie. The third lie you have to be willing to buy into is that capitalism doesn't work, that capitalism is somehow inherently evil. There are forms of capitalism. There's crony capitalism that is not a good thing. I'm not a believer in that. But the capitalism that is mostly practiced and applied here in the United States works. And you have to buy into a lie that it doesn't work. And part of that, a sub-lie to that, is that it only makes the rich richer and it makes the poor poorer. And that's absolutely, you cannot find a statistic anywhere that supports that. That is a flat out lie, and there are massive amounts of statistics out there and data out there that support exactly the opposite. That leads me to the fourth lie, and that is the cost of socialism. Anyone who tells you that socialism is a sustainable, affordable system is lying to you. It is a flat out lie. Socialism is unaffordable. There are not enough dollars available by the rich people. This is how people try and tell you can afford socialism. Elizabeth Warren is she's one of the champions of this. Take a little itty bitty teeny tiny bigger tax from those little teeny tiny percentage of people that make millions of dollars. Just take a little bit more from them and we can do all this stuff. No, you cannot. There are not enough millionaires that exist in this world. There are not enough billionaires that exist in this world that if you took all of their wealth from them, if you took all of their income from them, two things would happen. Number one, you would find that you don't have enough money to support all of your crap socialistic programs, and your socialism would still fail. And number two, you would find out that when you took all their money, you're taking most of the jobs away from Americans. You're taking most of the jobs away from working people. There are more people employed by small businesses in this country than by large corporations. You look at a company like Amazon that employs tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of people. You look at a company like Google that has tens of thousands of employees. You look at these companies and you say, that's where everyone works. No. For every one person there is that has a job at Google, there's 4 or 5 other people that have a job at a company with 100 to 200 employees, or let's say less than 1,000 employees. And the people providing and creating those jobs are the millionaires whose money you want to take to pay for your socialist program. It's common sense. You cannot afford socialism. Look at some of the things that we have going in this country that are the closest things we currently have to socialist programs. Right now, the U.S. budget is about $4.1 trillion. That's the annual budget for the United States government. About 23% of that, $59 billion, 23% of that is spent on, or excuse me, I'm looking at the wrong numbers. Social Security accounts for 23% of that, okay? 23% of a $4.1 trillion budget is a little less than $1 trillion, okay? The Medicare and Medicaid combined come up to about 26% of it, a little over $1 trillion. almost, not quite, but almost half of the entire US budget is already being spent on the two largest social programs that exist in this country. Medicare, Medicaid, I'm speaking of those as one program, and the Social Security. Now, I'm not on my podcast today. I'm not on my program to start advocating getting rid of them. I'm willing to bet, someone take me up on this and let's start doing a detailed analysis on this. I'm willing to bet that if either or both of those were privatized, you would cut those down respectively by 25% of the cost. I'm willing to bet that at least 25% of that cost that is involved in those is tied up in the bureaucracy and the administration. And the private sector could do it better. I'm going back to day number 2 in our series here, that the government cannot do anything more efficiently than the private sector could do it. If you got rid of Medicare and Medicaid, now I know everyone would scream out of their mind and say, oh, you are killing babies, you are killing old people. Blah, 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 blah. People would freak out if you ever suggested that. I'm not saying get rid of it. I'm saying turn it over to the private sector. Slash that budget by 25% and give it to the private sector and say, for this money, let's take the Medicare and Social Security, or excuse me, Medicare, Medicaid, okay? 26% of the budget, a little over $1 trillion. You slash that by 25%, and what do you have? $750 billion, approximately. $750 billion is what you now have if you cut that down by 25%, okay? And then give it to the private sector. Pick 5 or 6 of the biggest insurance companies in the world and say, in exchange for this $750 billion, you have to make sure that every eligible senior citizen has a plan that covers and protects them at the same level that Medicare currently covers and protects them. Okay? Everyone that is under a certain income and meets a certain threshold for qualifying for Medicaid, you've got to make sure that you cover their healthcare costs. Okay? Let the private sector do it. I guarantee you shave 25% off of that cost. You know what our deficit is running at right now? Somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 trillion deficit. All right? You just cut your deficit down by a quarter. You just eliminated it by a quarter. Social Security. I'm willing to bet that at least 25% of the cost of Social Security, pretty close to $1 trillion, is chewed up in the administration and the bureaucracy that is running it into the ground. You do 2 things. Number 1, you don't let Congress touch one single penny of the money coming in. You get smarter, better people investing the money that's coming in so that it grows better. And then you start managing the processes, and you can probably still pay people out the same way you're paying them out. You're not going to have to cut anyone's benefits. I'm a proponent of changing the eligibility for benefits. I'm making up a number here. If the average Social Security check that is paid out is $2,000 a month, for every person that has $2,000 a month of pension or has $2,000 a month based off of their dividends for their portfolio, their wealth, I'm saying start scaling it back for people that don't need it. A guy that's got $2 million in the bank the day he retires, and even if he never made a penny of interest on that, he could stretch that out over the remainder of his life and live the lifestyle that he wants. He doesn't need Social Security. I'm open to making changes like that. The private sector would do that. If you turned it over to the private sector, it would work. Get it out of the hands of the government. I'm not saying you have to get rid of the program. Let one small office be, that is with elected officials. Let them run a little bit of limited oversight over whoever is administrating it and paying it out, and you solve some of your problems. Look, I'm not saying we have to be 100% without social programs, but what I'm telling you is that socialism is unaffordable. If you take the energy sector, if you take the transportation sector, if you take away all of the stuff that is currently handled by the private sector and you start shifting all of that over to the government to make it fair for everyone, everyone loses. Look no farther than Cuba, look no farther than Venezuela. You cannot pay for socialism. Margaret Thatcher said it better than anyone has ever said it, and you can argue with this if you're willing to buy into the lie. The only way you can argue with this is if you throw logic out the window and you're willing to buy into the lie. Margaret Thatcher said the problem with socialism is you eventually run out of other people's money. You disincentivize people to be creative, to create jobs, to take risks, to start business. You start controlling the banks, and no one's going to get a small loan to go out and start a new business, and no one's going to want to do it anyway because the government's going to take it over if it shows any amount of success. You're not going to do it if you can't be the one making a great living and a great income and profit off of it. It just simply is unaffordable, and that's why socialism that's one of the reasons socialism has never worked anywhere it's been tried. You start adding on to this things like the Green New Deal, 12 plus trillion dollars that thing would cost. Medicare for all, $35 trillion. And even though these are figures that are over 10 years, take 3.5 trillion over 10 years, that's 3.5 trillion, or 35 trillion over 10 years. That's 3.5 trillion more. That almost doubles the annual budget right now, and we're running a deficit on it right now. There aren't enough millionaires out there to put an 80 or 90% tax on them to turn this thing to create enough money to pay for the crap you want to pay for in socialism. It simply doesn't work. All right, tomorrow's program, no teaser. I'm not going to give a teaser for tomorrow's program and give you a hint as to what it is. It is the big overarching lie of socialism. If you're willing to look at the facts, if you're willing to dig in and do some research, and if you have the ability to bust any of these other four lies, and I could bust them easily because I'm a logical person, but if it's a strain for you to come up with some logic to be able to bust through these lies and not willingly buy into them, then it's easier to see the big overarching lie. Tomorrow, no matter what the market is doing in the mornings, we're only going to spend a little bit of time on it. I'm going to spend the bulk of the time tomorrow finishing this little series we've done this week and talking about the big overarching lie that is socialism. I hope you join me. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.